Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the impact the number of injuries that occur at the collegiate and national levels of football dependent on the type of field they're playing on, either artificial turf or natural grass. So to start off, does anyone here know how many NFL fields are artificial turf and how many of them are natural grass? The correct response is that there are actually 17 natural grass fields, and then there are 14 artificial turf fields. So, throughout my research, I wanted to find out if the types of fields, either natural grass or artificial turf, impacted the number of injuries that occurred in collegiate as well as national football athletes. This topic first interested me because I was curious to see if the research found in the literature was going to support and predict what I was going to see while I was actually working with the Hampton-Sydney football team. Now, this team practices on grass fields as well as all of their home games are played on grass fields. However, out of the 10 games they played throughout the season, 7 of those occur on natural grass fields, but the remaining 3 are actually played on artificial turf. Before the team travels to play on an artificial turf field, they will practice on the Hampton-Sydney lacrosse turf field to get used to that surface. Before I started researching this topic, I had no idea how many different types of playing surfaces that were available to football athletes. I learned a lot more about different types of turf than I ever would have imagined reading through these research articles. First, I learned that there are commonly 2 types of natural grass that are used. There is rye, also known as Kentucky blue, and Bermuda grass. These types of grasses change dependent on the climate. In cooler areas, ryegrass is planted, and in warmer areas, the Bermuda grass is used. And there are also multiple types of artificial turf available and used, and these are defined based on their stiffness. When I first came up with this topic, I intended to look at injuries involving both the upper and lower extremities. However, throughout my research, I was only finding lower extremity injuries. And after considering the circumstances of what these research articles were looking for, I agreed as to why they were choosing to only focus on the lower extremity injuries, and which is due to that is the part of the body that is touching and is in contact with the field, which they're then looking at to see if it is the reason for their increase in injuries. I also was primarily only going to focus on male football players, but actually found that a few of my studies looked at female football players as well. When the NFL plays on a field with natural grass, they actually tend to overseed the field with rye seeds, and this causes the color of the grass to pop and appear a more bright green color on TV. However, this type of grass has shorter roots, and that can actually result in an increased injury rate. This is because when the athletes push off the grass, since the roots are so short, they're actually pulling the grass up, which can cause them to slip and get injured. So, with this being said, the athlete's safety is actually being compromised for eye candy and for viewing rates. So, there are currently no rules at any level that are set in place to regulate the type of playing field that football athletes are performing on. Grass fields are a more traditional type of field, but artificial turf fields have been introduced due to economic as well as climate changes. For example, artificial turf fields are cheaper because it does not cost as much to maintain them, and over the past 10 years, there's actually been a significant increase in the number of artificial turf fields due to economic and climate changes at different locations. Through the literature, I found that there is not a significant difference between the number of injuries that occurred on artificial turf and natural grass fields. However, the studies that I did find were very contradicting to each other. In one study that was conducted by Bianco et al., they concluded that artificial turf was safer and resulted in less injuries than natural grass fields. But Westerman et al. Stated that there is no statistical difference between the number of non-contact lower extremity injuries and the type of playing field. However, Williams et al. Found that there is actually an increased rate of ankle injury on artificial turf fields. In another study conducted by Fuller et al., they found that the most common season-ending injury on artificial turf fields was hamstring tears, and then the most common season-ending injury on grass fields was ACL tears. In another study, all NCAA football ACL injuries were surveyed. 147 of these ACL tears occurred on turf, while the remaining 161 occurred on natural grass. This concluded that per 1,000 athlete exposures, there was a greater risk of injury to the ACL on the natural grass. However, this was not by a big difference. In another study, it was brought up that switching surfaces may be the cause that these injury rates are increasing. After seeing the differences in the results among the literature, I would suggest that more research be conducted due to these opposing findings. Through this additional research, I think that it would be the most beneficial to focus on the injury occurrence rate based on the consistency of the playing field surface due to the statement by Stefan. And this is going to look at how often the surface is changing that the athletes are playing on and what that injury rate is relative to that change. Say that a team plays on a natural grass field for 4 weeks straight. That includes practice time as well as competition time. Then, all of a sudden, they quickly change to an artificial turf field. The research would then be looking at what happens during that time that they quickly switch over to that artificial turf field. Another possible study could be looking at going on a grass field for 4 weeks, going to an artificial surface for 1 day to a couple of days, then going back to the grass surface, and again looking at that injury occurrence rate relative to the time that they're spending on these different fields. Finally, to implement this research into clinical practice, rehabilitation plans can be made to prevent the types of injuries that most frequently occur based on the type of playing field.